Hey guys, Emily here, and this week's special guest is none other than Charlotte Drury. Welcome, Charlotte. She's a person of many names.
Call
Welcome.
me whatever you please.
Um, yes, well, those are the two. Don't worry, I won't be calling you anything else.
Said babe,
Yeah,
honey.
definitely honey. I'm feeling honey. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Charlie or Charlotte, whichever name we're going with today, is a type 1 diabetic and former Olympian, which is that is exciting to even say in the same sentence. Probably not for you because you were diagnosed with type 1 kind of during a lot of this. But right off the bat here at Pancreas Pals, we like to jump into diagnosis stories. So let's hear yours if you're comfortable sharing.
Absolutely. It's quite the tale. And I feel like the more I tell it too, the more I realize that everybody has quite the tale and they're really interesting stories. But for me, obviously I lived it, so I was like, this is everything. This is terrible. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone.
I mean, it
But the more
is
I tell it,
though. I mean, well, it's not. Let's put things in perspective. But like it is when it's happening, you are
right,
dying. That's what it
right.
is. So,
Seriously, very,
yeah.
very seriously, very ill. Um, but yeah, it took me a really long time to realize that I was very ill. So it was in like, I was diagnosed in April of 2021. And the first time I realized that like life was getting a little bit harder was June of 2020. So it was like knee deep in the pandemic. I'm training for the Olympics that was supposed to happen next month. Now the Olympics are postponed, which was like a whole mental gymnastics, pardon the pun. But
For
like,
those who don't know, she does gymnastics. That was her Olympic sport, but
yes.
not the floor um routines of I don't even know any of the
Yeah,
language.
I'm no dancer, no beam routine, no bars. I did trampoline. So it was just one event. But yeah, I was trampoline. But I did artistic gymnastics forever. I did it for like 10 years and then I quit and started trampoline. So that's a whole nother
We could do a
little
whole podcast on your career and the fact that you were
gosh,
also like, how old are you? 23?
7.
Oh my
Wouldn't
God.
that be cool if
Why
I
did I
was
think you were
23?
23? Okay, we all need our skincare routine, but also I'm deceased. Someone did that to me the other day and I was like, I'm 30.
It
Anyways,
feels good. It feels good.
yeah, we're starting to not care. Anyways, okay, back to the diagnosis
Oh,
story.
right. So diabetes, right. I'm here. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm on it. Okay. So Olympics are postponed. That's tough. That's already difficult. I'm training alone. It's me and my coach in the gym. We're training in complete isolation. I have no teammates. We've got no national team camps coming up. We have no competition. So I'm like, of course, life is getting harder. Life is getting harder for everybody. I struggle with depression. Of course, I'm getting depressed. Of course, I'm having a hard time getting out of bed. Of course, I'm having a hard time getting through a practice. Um, and then that just kept getting worse over the next couple of months. I remember like having a moment of like, good God, like I'm so weak. I just need to keep working harder when I was like watching my teammates when they finally came back into the gym, probably like November time period. And they were starting the warm up, and I was sitting on the floor, like watching them running. And I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, I have no strength in my body. I'm exhausted. I feel terrible. I've been cutting back on workouts because I can't even get through them. And that made me feel even worse. And then, not to mention that I was like secretly going into my fridge in the middle of the night and like scarfing down cookies and cupcakes and anything that I could get my hands on because I was starving, but couldn't
Right.
explain it because I was like, well, I'm not working out as much. I'm not as strong as I was. I don't have any of the muscles that I used to have. You need to stop eating so mumuch. Like,
It's
this
so
is why
easy to
you're
explain
getting
the
so,
symptoms. Yeah.
girl, I'm like a professional gaslighter for myself at this point.
I mean, Reese,
Like,
we literally have a podcast about it, but were you also like, because I know for me, one of the biggest signs was having to pee constantly. And I'm
uh-huh.
curious when you're a professional athlete and hydration is so important, does that even stand out to you? Like, did you have that?
That only stood out to me in literally the last couple of weeks before I was diagnosed. So before that, I had my whole life, I've always just been like a water drinker. I always would have my water bottle closed during practice. Like I would take a sip after every turn. I always kind of felt like my mouth was dry. And so I was always drinking way more water than my teammates. That was like a lifelong thing. So I didn't notice that I was drinking more water until the last couple of weeks before I was diagnosed. And I would get up to pee in the middle of the night. And I was like, that's new. Never done that in my life. But
It's
like,
did your hair stand up on your arms, like having to pee so bad? That was
yes,
like my thing. And
yes, I would literally get like shivers.
yes,
Uh
exactly.
huh.
I think that I do think that that only happens towards the end. You know what I mean? Like
Uh
really
huh.
close to when, because, when you think about it, you're going into diabetic ketoacidosis, right? DKA. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when your blood turns acidic. And that's like the biggest, that's the end sign
Yeah.
of something's up. And that's usually what people go into when they discover they have type 1
Mm,
or in some severe cases, type 2. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, sorry to interrupt you on your journey. So
No,
you
that's such an interesting point too, because one of the like red flags I had, not even a red flag, a yellow flag in my head that I didn't even think about until like months after I got my diagnosis was we used to get drug tested all the time, like random drug tests. Somebody would show up at our house in the morning, and
be an Olympian.
that's it. Oh, to be in elite sport.
Yeah, it's not just
But
Olympians, I guess. Yeah.
me and Debbie, we go way back. She's been my drug tester since I was like 15. And so like
What a sentence. My drug tester since I was 15.
me, this like super straight edge, massive fear of authority little girl getting drug tested like once a month. Um, yeah. So fun fact, we all get drug tested very frequently. And one of the facts or facets of the drug test is that you have to measure like there's a word for it, but it's basically like the density of your urine, like how much particulate is in your urine to make sure that they can get a
Interesting.
sample out of it. And for
Right.
me, I was always like really hydrated. So like my pee is basically clear. We're always checking it. Sometimes I would have to give like two samples, not out of the like norm for me. She comes and I get drug tested, and I think it's like October of 2020. And I had the flu. I'm making air quotes because I don't know what it was, but I had the flu, and I was like vomiting all night long and very, very ill. Hadn't eaten in like 24 hours, was drinking like liquid IVs to like put something in me. And then the next morning I wake up and Debbie's at my door, and I'm like, wow, that's just phenomenal. Thank God you're here. And she comes and I get drug tested or whatever, and she like measures the specific gravity, the specific gravity of your urine. Wow, any doctor or like science person who's watching this is probably like, finally, she said the word. It's specific gravity.
I've literally never heard these things, so you're good. Because it's
Uh
all
huh.
about me.
Cool. It's fine. It's fine. I'm here to educate, and
Thank you.
that's my
Thank
only
you.
mission.
We love an educated pal. Truly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, so Debbie's measuring the specific gravity of my urine, and I can't remember the numbers, but like she was like, "This is absurd. This is a crazy high amount of particulate in your urine." And I was like, "But it's clear." And she's like, "Yeah, I know. I don't get it." And we are like, "Okay, well, we'll file that away for another time, I guess."
That's so wild. Wait,
And
so was it because of the
then,
glucose?
yes, it was sugar in my pee or glucose in my pee. And she comes back in February, I think, maybe January. And same thing. She's like, I've never seen a number this high. And I explained it away. I was like, well, I had the flu last night. I'm clearly very dehydrated.
Right.
Like, who knows what's going on in my body right now? The next time she comes, though, she's like, I just like remember I'm like leaning in my kitchen waiting for her to like finish all like the testing stuff that she can has to do before she can leave. And she's telling me again, she's like, maybe you should go to the doctor. Like, one time I tested this volleyball player, and or somebody I knew tested this volleyball player because like women test women and men test men. And he was like, he had a very high specific gravity of his urine, and turned out he had like early stages of prostate cancer.
Oh my
And
God.
I know. So I was like, you know what, Debbie? I should probably
Wow.
go to the
Debbie,
doctor.
way to scare the shit out of everyone. But like,
I know.
honestly, I'm glad she's advocating for your health.
Yeah.
Like,
So
thanks,
now I'm on a
Debbie.
mission to educate every single person in USADA that if their specific gravity is too high, they need to go to the doctor. Um, Not
What's
really, but I
USADA?
probably should. Oh, the United States Anti-Doping Association
Ah, yes. Okay.
administration, our
Association.
governing body,
Okay.
something of those.
I
Is
don't
there a
know.
fact check at the end of this?
No, but now I feel like there should be, but mostly it will be fact checking me because I just confidently say wrong things all the time. Like it's my job,
That's
which is
okay. That's
horrible when
good.
you're a
That's
journalist.
good.
Like that's not something you should do. But not that Pancreas Pals is journalism, but anyway, my
No,
day job,
hard-hitting journalism. This is
hard
what I'm
hitting.
here for.
Wait, so that's wild though. So the particulates in your urine were elevated consistently
Hmm.
because of the glucose, but
Hmm.
it hadn't really kind of transcended just, it was kind of just in that area of your life. Like things weren't adding up yet.
They weren't adding up. I knew. So I had at that point, like come like 2021, I had like weird symptoms kind of all around, but then I can explain them all away. Like I had
Right.
a really bad concussion in 2020 or
That's
2019
horrible.
that took so long to heal. So like the dizziness and the brain fog and like
Right.
the perception changes that happened for me when my blood sugar is really high, I was like, well, it's my concussion symptoms coming back.
Hmm.
And then I was like, well, I'm really tired and I can't get out of bed. There's my depression coming back. Let me go back to my psychiatrist. Like all of the other things. And it's like, oh, I can't train as well. I can't bounce as high. I'm not as strong as I was. Well, I'm getting older. Maybe I've passed my prime,
Oh my God,
even though
tell
I'm
me
23.
that being a professional sports person is good for your psyche. Wow.
Oh,
Being
yeah,
past
right?
your prime at like, wait, so this all happened though, 2021 was 3 years ago. So this happened
Mm-hmm.
when you were like 24.
Yes, I was 24.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maybe that's
24,
why I thought
24,
you
25.
were. That's okay. I remember you telling me Charlie and I have met before in person once.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you told me about your diagnosis, and that's why I just in my mind you were still 20, 23, 24. Anyways,
That's okay. We can keep it there. For everybody listening, I'm 24.
I honestly, my boyfriend and I like to say that everything, like we're still in 2020, like 2019. And, like it doesn't
I
count until COVID's
can't,
like officially gone, which it won't ever be.
it
But
won't ever be.
no.
I feel that. I feel like my sense of identity was like solidified in 2019, 2020, and I just have yet to move on from there.
Oh, for sure.
Like
Well, it's
I'm gonna turn
trauma.
28. It you know what? It's the trauma.
It's the trauma. And it's the shared trauma, but it's also extra traumatic because you were diagnosed with this like
God. Yeah.
life-changing disease in the middle of a
Uh-huh.
pandemic while also learning more about how horrible COVID is for people with types of
Mm-hmm.
diabetes. And,
Uh-huh.
that must have been incredibly traumatic. But I really do think that a lot of us, I think if you don't have a little bit of trauma coming out of COVID, like something's
Yeah.
not right. You haven't
Then you
processed.
weren't paying attention.
Yeah. Or you just don't care, which is another issue.
Yes,
But not for me
entirely.
to diagnose. Anyways, so you find out
Mm-hmm.
at what point? So this was in February, January or February
Mm-hmm.
that Debbie's like, hey, your pee's still a little whack, even though you're good, you're not
Mm-hmm.
doping, but
Mm-hmm.
like something's up. Maybe you should get this
Yeah,
checked
no
out.
drugs, but
Yeah.
you should
So
probably go to the doctor. And she did mention the word diabetes. She mentioned, she was like, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, it could be diabetes, it could be this. And I was like, okay. And then I remember like a couple weeks later, starting to like the penny is not dropped yet, but the penny is like getting pushed towards the edge. Like
yeah.
I'm starting to get there. And I was like sitting on the counter one night talking to my partner, and I was like, I think I have diabetes. Like, what if I did? How crazy would that be? Because also crazy thing, like in her life, her dad has type 2. And at this time, they had just done this like advertisement for this like type 2 diabetes drug. So like we were just weirdly in the diabetes world for this like hot
It
minute.
targets you. It targets all of
It targets
us.
you. It comes at you. The universe says, I'm
Well,
coming for you.
also it's definitely targeted marketing. Like
Yes.
your Instagram heard you say
My
diabetes.
Instagram knew I was diabetic before I
Oh, I
did.
fully think Google knows. Google knows everything. They know when we're going to die one day. I'm convinced.
Okay, I'm gonna circle back to that because I want to hear more.
I totally just came up with this on the spot. I'm going to get committed like tomorrow. I don't really think that, but I do think that our devices listen. And I do know from a tech perspective that things are listening and it's not always bad. It's not always good, but you have to
No,
turn things on and off on your devices because, that's
yeah.
life. I
Mm-hmm.
sound like one of
It,
those 5G people. I swear I'm not. I need to edit all of this out. Okay, back to
back. So then,
I'm dead.
so then well, I had this like kind of moment of like saying I think I have diabetes, and then I had to go straight to a national team camp, and it was our first camp back, and we were all supposed to be like on top of our game. We have our first Olympic trial in like 3 weeks, a month, and so everybody is like honestly like kicking ass at this camp. and I couldn't do my easy version of my routine. Like we had to show routines and I was embarrassed. Like I was embarrassed to show up at this camp.
Well, so you're what's the word? Your routine, if you will, it's all on the
Hmm.
trampoline, and that requires
Hmm.
a lot of energy. Not that any of these
Hmm.
don't, but I'm assuming the
Hmm.
trampoline, I mean, how many hours are you jumping on this trampoline? And like what
So many hours.
and like
So
it
many
just
hours.
that probably also kind of saved you a little bit
Uh-huh.
because
I fully believe that if I hadn't been working out so much, that I would have just like
your
been
glucose would have
kaput.
just been so for those that are pancreatically capable, first of all, mazel to you. Second of all,
Hmm.
it with exercise kind of speeds up any insulin that may be still in your system and kind of delivers it to all the cells. I'm butchering this, but basically can help you lower or stave off a high blood sugar. So when you
Uh-huh.
aren't getting added insulin in your body, and for those with type 1 diabetes, for the most part, you are no longer able to produce insulin. So whatever insulin you have in your body is either what, your honeymoon phase, what little bit is being secreted from your pancreas, or in most cases, you're donezo, which is really kind of when DKA sets in and when your blood turns acidic and everything kind of starts shutting down. So
Hmm.
if you don't have any, you're not getting any insulin into your system. But if you're constantly working out, um, this is not a solution because bad things will happen either way. You need to get checked out, but
Hmm.
it kind of
Hmm.
prolongs the process a little bit. Or it might, obviously, like no one body
Yeah.
is the same. So
Yeah.
you're doing these intense workouts and
Yeah.
which are you losing weight at this point?
So that's the other thing that's really weird about my diagnosis is no, I was gaining weight.
I didn't
I
lose any weight and I am like
mm-mm.
trigger warning. I know this is like my own horrible psyche here, but
Hmm.
like I was like I couldn't even get that. Like come on.
God, for fuck's sake.
I'm
Come
like
on. I
out of
didn't
all
even
the,
come
like
out skinny on the other hand.
yeah,
This
I'm
is
like
really messed up. Anybody listening, don't take this as a joke. But like, come on.
literally, no, I mean, okay, listen, I'm from the South and being skinny was equated to being happy and being beautiful and
Hmm.
all these things that I don't
Hmm.
necessarily at all think these days. But also
Absolutely.
this was like early 2000s, 90s, whatever. Actually, no, I was diagnosed in 2014, so that was like just a lie. But
But that's still toxic. Like that's toxic Tumblr, internet culture,
yeah, exactly.
magazines, Cosmopolitan, all these things.
Yeah.
Skinny, 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 skinny.
Yeah, work. I did not say that. I work for the same company as Cosmopolitan, so
I didn't
we
say
need to
that
edit
at
that
all,
out.
actually.
But
Beep.
yeah, no, it was no. As long as it's not me, this is free speech. But I mean, listen, like my thought process at 20 years old when this was happening, also that's like one of the key signs of diabetes. So it's also
Hmm.
easy to explain stuff away when you're not getting one of those key symptoms. But it just goes
Hmm.
to show you that it can still be this thing. You need to
Hmm.
advocate for yourself. So
Hmm.
this has been the longest diagnosis story I think we've ever done because I keep interrupting you. But
No, it's okay. It's a long story. I drag it all
no,
as
no, no, no,
well.
no. I have interrupted you like at least 7 times. So
And
this
we're all better for it.
I don't know. Don't lie. Don't lie to the people. They know. They know. They can hear. But okay, so you're at this camp and you are like something ain't right and you're not losing
Yep.
weight and you're dying literally and
Yes. I mean, I
figuratively.
look unwell. Like if
Yeah.
I go back and I look at photos of myself at that time, like my hair is brittle. Like I have eczema and psoriasis all over my
And you look a
skin.
little
Like
paler,
I
a
look
little
pale,
sunken. Yeah.
very sunken, very pale.
The eyes are always
Mm.
sunken. And you look back and
The
you're like,
eyes
damn,
tell.
that should have
Hmm.
been, a
I was
heads
like,
up.
whoa, how is no one looking at me? Because it's so gradual, but like, how is
Hmm.
nobody looking at me and being like, you're unwell?
Right. And then
So
you hear Nick Jonas's story, and he's like, everyone knew I looked like I was so skinny. And I'm like, wow.
couldn't be me.
Yeah, we must not have the same disease. I don't know.
No,
But
nope, couldn't be
okay, so
me.
at what point did you finally get your diagnosis?
Okay, so I flew home from that camp and I remember being on the plane and the penny finally dropped. I was like, there's no way. I have been working so hard. I have been trying so hard. I've been trying my 100%. And if this is what my outcome is, I can't do things right now that I was able to do when I was 12 years old. Like
Right,
I am nowhere near, the math ain't mathing. If I'm putting in 100%, I got to be getting out a little bit more than this.
right.
Penny finally drops and I go, something is wrong with me. Something is fully well and truly wrong with me. I'm sick. And I go to the doctor and we get my blood work done. And she, the next day, so I go home, call her, go into the office, get my blood drawn, go to practice. And I'm at gym. And then I'm driving home. It's like 6 p.m. And I get a missed call from the doctor's office and I missed it. I'm driving. I was like, okay, I'll call back tomorrow. And then they call me again and it's like 6:15 now. And I'm like, okay, like I don't know a lot, but I do know that when you get two calls after hours from your
Yeah,
doctor in a
it's
row,
you got to call
news
back.
ain't good. News
Yeah.
ain't good. So I pick up the phone and she basically, and like, not to draw it out, was like, all right, do you know what an A1C is? And I was like, no. So she explains it to me. And she was like, normal range is up to like 5 point something,
It's
5
5.6, I
point
think. 5.5. Anything
5.6.
above 5.5 is, yeah.
Got it. Okay. I've definitely spread misinformation on that.
No, so anything
5.5.
5.6 to 6.4 is considered pre-diabetes.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Again, I'm
I don't know
confidently
why.
saying something that could be very wrong. So we should fact check that here. Okay, I'm gonna Google. You don't worry about it. I'll Google while
Okay.
you.
I'll continue. You
Yeah,
Google.
yeah, yeah.
She tells me the numbers that we're going to have up here momentarily. And then she's like, okay, so then your A1C is 14.6. And I was like, okay, so what does
Oh
that
my
mean?
God, you were 14.6?
Yeah, girl,
Okay.
I was high.
Ooh, okay, so
Hmm.
here's the A1C, which, you know, is an estimate, and
Hmm.
anything that is okay, this can't be right. This one says 5.7.
So, okay, wait, no, I thought it was 5.7. And I
Okay,
was like, whoa,
apparently
I've
it's
been
right.
telling people
Wow. No,
5.7.
I've been telling everyone the wrong thing. Okay, so anything greater than 5.7, 5.7 to 6.4 is considered pre-diabetic, and that
Okay.
is, in my opinion, a term that's most often used for people who end up being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or another form of
Hmm.
diabetes that's not typically type
Hmm.
1. There
Hmm.
are other forms like MODY.
Hmm.
And then anything that is greater than 6.4 is considered diabetic. Now, when you are in, you know, your 20s, don't have a family history, and I'm assuming they probably tested you for some other markers of type 1, like other proteins and things that
Hmm.
can, maybe not proteins. I know Mike is going to be listening and he'll be like, you butchered everything here. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
That's
just
okay.
food
Dr.
for
Mike, he's our
thought.
fact checker.
Yeah, he's really not though. He's like too busy like saving lives. Um,
God forbid.
so God forbid. So for just to put things in perspective here, a A1C of 10% roughly translates to a blood glucose of 240. So if your
Oh.
A1C was 14, it had to have been in the 300s consistently, which means
Uh-huh.
you probably, like, I cannot believe that this, I mean,
Hmm.
listen, that's an average of 2 to 3 months. So it could
Hmm.
have been like in the 180 to 230 range for like 6 weeks, and then boom in like the
Hmm.
500s for like two. You never really know.
It could have been. But so my first endocrinologist was a nightmare. He was
Retweet.
terrible,
Same.
terrible. And so my doctor calls me that night and she says, you need to come in first thing in the morning. Doesn't give me any more information than that. Doesn't tell me to go to the hospital. Doesn't, there's so many things that went wrong in the next coming
We
week that
love a
I'm
red
like,
flag. Love a red flag.
goodness. If I share this story kind of frequently in the diabetes space. And when I say that I slander this medical care team
Oh,
for
head back
the
to season one,
way.
episode one. Oh no, I'm already running out of time. I'm gonna have to generate another
Oh
one for
shoot.
us
Okay, okay, okay.
because I've
That's
interrupted you
my bad.
so many times. It's not
No,
your bad, Charlie. It's not
I'm a
your bad.
talker.
No, it's me. It's a problem. I'm the problem. It's me. I didn't mean to quote Taylor
Okay,
Swift.
but we all love it.
Okay, so we're slandering your doctor. So
Oh yeah, I slander him
basically,
frequently.
she lets you go, continue about your day when
Uh-huh.
your A1C is 14. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm no doctor, as we've all established, but you could drop into a coma at any
Any
moment.
moment,
Yeah,
any moment, any moment. And if I think about that too
and you
much,
were driving.
and I was driving. I actually luckily had pulled over because I knew before I got that call, I was like kind of close to my freeway exit. So I got off my freeway exit and then I just like pulled over on the side of the freeway.
Yeah.
Not at my apartment yet. And
Very
like I
safe
had this
driving.
feeling.
Look at
Thanks.
you. If you get
Thank
like a
you.
really stressful and important call, definitely pull over. I
Pull
love
over.
that. Not that
Pull
you
over.
got
We'll all
diagnosed
be
yet.
better for it.
Yeah.
But it was almost like kind of a, I don't want to use the word premonition, but it was very like, I know something's wrong with me and I know she's about to tell me
It
what.
was a sign. Yeah.
It was a sign. Yeah. Like the card, like the stars were aligning. I knew, you know.
Well, you've also been putting this puzzle together for months,
Mhm.
whether you knew it
Mhm.
or not. Like,
Mhm.
and at some point, you got to listen to your body. And
Yeah.
I mean, as a professional athlete, it's kind of like, I imagine you're constantly listening to your body, but so many of these things, like you already explained, can be explained away. Like
Mhm.
I was a freshman in college when I was diagnosed, and or no, I was a sophomore when I was officially diagnosed. I was misdiagnosed for like a
Mhm.
year and a half, and I was explaining away all of my symptoms as like, oh, it's, I'm new to a dining hall. It's got to be just really
Mhm.
salty food, or I must not be drinking enough water, or like my roommate's alarm keeps going off. That's why I'm so exhausted all the time. Or, so, stuff that really obviously looking back, like, yeah, okay, that explains like a one-off situation, not like a
Mhm.
year of my life. But
Mhm.
it's, you look back, you finished that camp. I
Yep.
finished my freshman year. I didn't miss any
Yep.
classes, and I literally was so ill. You were
Yep.
so ill. You were on a flight. I can't imagine flying
Mhm.
while like all of
And
this.
I had eaten a perfect bar, drank a Gatorade, and had an applesauce fruit pouch because I was so hungry on that flight. And I was like, good God. The things that I look back on that I was eating, and I was like,
Yeah.
because you get those starvation cues because your body's not getting
Right. It's not
any
getting the
energy.
nutrients. Yeah.
Your cells are getting nothing. And I had a lot of shame over that in that like year. Like I have a history of disordered eating just from sport, being obsessed with eating things that are only healthy. Very
Also, I
much
feel like
like
gymnastics is also probably
it's tough.
you wear things that people like it's like
Hmm.
it's not a lot of clothing. I would, it's
Uh-huh.
understandable.
Uh-huh. And especially as you get older, it's not like,
And you hit puberty,
well,
like,
yeah, gosh, yeah, you hit puberty and you get older and you feel self-conscious and you're a girl and you're growing up and you know you need to look a certain way
and you're getting
because
rated on
you
it.
because you want to look a certain way, but also because you're gonna do better if you look a certain way.
That's
You are
so
constantly being
best.
fed the
Yeah.
information that your lines, they would always be called your lines. Your lines are so important in this. Your lines need to be better. You need to be more elegant. And what that is you need to be skinnier. You need to be thinner. You need to look more trim. You need to, but you also need to be able to lift 200 pounds. You also need to be able to be the strongest person in the entire room, like,
Make
and
it
be
make
thin and
sense.
beautiful. Make
Make
it
it
make
make
sense.
sense.
So I carried that a lot with me, especially in that year before I was diagnosed, because I couldn't stop the cravings. I couldn't stop eating. And in particular, there was one thing that I could not stop eating, and it was those carrot cupcakes with the cream
Oh
cheese
my
frosting
God, I love
from Trader
those.
Joe's. Oh my God. They were so good. And they were in the refrigerated section, so you know that they're good, right? Like they're
They're like
delicious
as
and
fresh as a
delightful.
Trader Joe's fresh can be.
Exactly.
Except I love
And
Trader Joe's. That's no
exactly.
hate. It's just reality.
Mm-mm. It's just
Um,
reality.
I'm curious. So you get this diagnosis. I'm gonna have to like start a new meeting session. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do
It's
want
okay.
to hear a little bit more if you're okay, because this is gonna end in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But so you get your diagnosis. You're still on track for the Olympics, right? Like what is going
More or
through your
less.
head?
So, kind of at that time, I was doing so poorly in training. And then I saw myself as compared to the other athletes at that camp. And I was like, there's no way. There's just no way. And part of me was like, there wasn't enough time to think after that camp of like, can I even make it at this stage? Because I got the diagnosis the next day. But like after the diagnosis, I was like, not even thinking about the Olympics anymore.
Right.
It was just so far from my mind where I was like, oh my God, I could die at any minute. And now I have to learn all of these things, how to inject yourself, how to take your glucose, like what do these numbers even mean? What's the difference between a
Right.
bolus and a basal and all of these different things and like Googling, just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Now what? And like all the beyond type 1, like infographics coming up and like everything on the internet being very, very, very helpful, but also being this onslaught of information and
And
an
it's
entire
scary.
vocabulary that I don't know about.
Oh yeah, the vocab.
And I'm scared.
Yeah, and you're keeping
And I'm very
yourself
scared.
alive.
And I'm
I
very
feel like
scared.
that's the piece that always like, okay, yeah, you're learning, but it's not like you're studying for a test. The test already happened.
Mm-hmm.
It's retroactive. The
Mm-hmm.
learning is retroactive. And I feel like that is one of the hardest things to cope with and to understand unless you have a chronic illness that's kind of been thrust upon you.
Hmm.
It's something that you're still retroactively learning. It's like you can never catch up. It's
Yes.
it's just and it's honestly,
Yeah.
but I feel like once you realize that, it kind of helps you let go a little bit because that's something that I've
Hmm.
always struggled with in figuring out that like your body's changing and something that worked for you yesterday doesn't mean it's going to work for you today, but all you can do is
Hmm.
try and get as close to what's healthy for you
Hmm.
without beating yourself up. And like I can't
Hmm.
imagine being I'm a competitive person, but I'm not like a sports competitive person.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I just really can't imagine when your life is already filled with numbers and scores, like it would be being a professional athlete, also
Hmm.
having to, synthesize all this information with a disease that also has to do with numbers and scores.
Yep.
Like, what's
Yep.
that like psychologically?
Psychologically was very, very, very difficult because on top of that, the carb counting was
Right.
super triggering for me. I spent years after, so more backstory. In 2016, I was training for the Rio Olympics. I ended up breaking my ankle like the day before
Oh
trials.
my God.
So that was really, really bad. And I wasn't in a good place leading up to that already. And I was already very control freak about my food and about my body and all of these things. And that continued after I didn't make that team. And then the massive depressive episode that comes from that trauma,
Right.
and had worked very, very, very hard to be different for this Olympic quad. And so it was very much, I'm not going to be counting carbs. I'm not counting calories. I'm not paying attention to those things. I'm just eating what is going to fuel my body and make me feel good. And now I have a doctor telling me, well, there's 40 carbs in this, and there's 60 carbs in this, and there's da da da, da, and you need to find the secret carbs. And I was like, I spent my entire life finding the secret carbs.
I know where the secret carbs are.
I
They know
know where
where
they
I
live.
am. Like, yeah, that's so
And
rough.
so that was really tough. Now it lives in a piece of my brain that is separate. It's not, it's the emotion of it has been taken out of it just by sheer necessity of like, I actually, well, another thing, I don't carb count anymore. I look at something and I look at it and I calculate it based on units of insulin. Like I look
Right.
at a
So you're
plate of pasta.
you're subconsciously carb
Mm-hmm.
counting, but it's not a number that you're getting off of a plate that has to do with the
Exactly.
worth of the food. It's just a medical necessity that comes out of that. Like
Yes.
you're
So I'm
looking at
looking
it in terms of
at,
minutes.
exactly. I'm looking at the plate of a chocolate cake, knowing that that's going to be 7 units for me. Or instead of saying that's, um, I don't know, 60 grams of carbs and like, or whatever it is. So that's been very helpful for my brain.
Oh yeah, and the Olympics.
Oh, her. Yeah.
The Olympics is a her. We gendered the Olympics.
Obviously.
Well, yeah, I
Of course
mean,
we have.
kind of catty, let's be real, but
She's a little catty.
and stressful.
So stressful, a little catty. Love her. She has her things.
Wait, are you so okay, so clearly I didn't do enough research. I was like, oh, I already met Charlie. She's 23.
I
So
am.
I
Yes.
basically okay. Also, for context, I we met at a dinner with Dexcom
Hmm.
like a minute ago. And with your very lovely partner. And we honestly were just kind of like, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I definitely didn't learn enough from that conversation to not do my homework. So that's on me. Um, but I feel like I learned more about Lori, to be quite honest, because it's so
Fair.
freaking funny.
That dinner was so funny. And you know what I remember specifically because it was yourself and then it was two other people who also worked in media at the table,
Yeah.
somebody from Dexcom and another guest of the night. And
Yes.
we were laughing and having so much fun and being so candid and just kind of shooting the shit that at one point of time, one of the three of you goes, I just need you both to know that all of this is off the record.
Oh yeah. It wasn't, I doubt that was me. I mean, I actually know that does sound like me.
I don't
Because
think it was you,
okay, no.
but it was hilarious. And I was like, both Laura and I looked at each other and we were like, oh my God, we forgot.
No, wait, I do think it was me because I remember Lori said something and I was like,
Mm,
you guys, like, yes. 1,000%, but also as someone that has gone for scoops before, like you can't, I just felt like it needed to be said. I remember this now. It was
Yeah.
Lori didn't say anything like bad, but I don't think it was something that I was something I could totally see being a headline. So I was
Yeah.
like, no, let's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once you
Which
say it,
is,
everything's off the table. So it just
yeah.
felt like it needed to be said.
Yeah.
What can I say? I'm a
We,
martyr. I hope
you,
my boss doesn't hear this.
you really took one for the team. No, no, it wouldn't have even been a good headline. I can't remember what it was, but it
No,
probably
it
would have
wouldn't
been
have been
bad.
good for, yeah,
No,
no. I mean, I think it was something about the Olympics that, or not the Olympics, about
probably.
gymnastics that we were talking about
Hmm.
that like we just don't, let's not get into. This is about diabetes. Um,
I have that. We
yeah,
have diabetes.
yeah, we both do. Lori does not.
Lori does not have diabetes, but if she got it tomorrow, and we joke about this a lot, if she got it, she would be a pro by
My
default.
twin sister, yeah. So my twin, I'm fraternal. My twin Laura has been on the podcast before. She's pancreatically capable. We don't hold that against
Hmm.
her.
Mm.
She is. I keep wanting to like find a nice diabetic person to set her up with because I just think she would
Mm.
be the
The ideal.
ultimate partner of a diabetic. Like I just feel like she know I lived with her for 6 years after my
Hmm.
diagnosis. Like, I mean, yeah, we're twins, but she's like one of, I mean, out of my families, you probably get this as being diagnosed as an adult. Like it's kind of
Hmm.
harder for your parents to learn when they're not living with you. Um,
Hmm.
and she just really understood it. Like she still really
Hmm.
understands it. So, there are any single fellas out there that are looking for for someone
I
in New
will keep
York,
this so deep
matchmaker right
in
here.
my mind.
But I totally keep taking us off on tangents. Anyways, so we met at this Dexcom dinner.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
LOL.
yeah.
And I didn't do my homework, so I'm throwing myself under the bus. But you did you not compete in, so like what happened? You broke your
Okay.
ankle before Rio. You got
Hmm.
diagnosed in
Hmm.
during the, I don't even remember where the Olympics were.
Tokyo.
Thank you, Tokyo. So yeah, you didn't go to Tokyo.
I went to Tokyo as the Olympic alternate. So
Okay,
trampoline
there
is
it
a
is.
team of one, which is obviously very
Sorry.
competitive.
A team
I
of
know.
one.
It's a
And
team of one.
oh no, it was your face, and I realized that no one else can see your face right now. So it's just like extra savage me laughing at you for being an alternate while you're going through this huge trauma. Which we're
That's
all gonna
okay.
need therapy after this episode. So thanks for listening, listener. But
It's
okay, so
true.
you go to Tokyo as the alternate in the
Uh-huh.
midst of having this chronic illness thrust upon
Uh-huh.
you and finally
Uh-huh.
figuring out what the F is going wrong with you. I like how I censored myself there, but I've been cursing out the wazoo for every other word. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so, okay, so you're in Tokyo.
I am in Tokyo, and obviously it's a COVID games. It's not very fun. Um, and then alternates don't get to be in the Olympic Village with everyone, so you're very much just like extra separated from everyone because you're already not on the team or like in the competing team.
Right.
So you're separated and it's COVID, so you're
Extra
isolated.
separated. Honestly, though, that's probably the safest place you could have been.
It totally was. And me and my coach took it very seriously and we were like this is the most unpredictable Olympic Games that could ever happen. Being an
Right.
alternate in this realm of like life right now is just
It's
it
probably the most
carries
likely time that you would be needed.
exactly, exactly. So we took that very seriously and we were gonna have like a cute little like celebration when I got back from Olympic trials and before we left for the games and it was gonna be like a send off for the Olympics, like everybody, very normal, like whatever it was. And then somebody at the gym got COVID and we canceled it. And like we were very, very, very careful,
Cautious. Yeah.
very cautious, especially then with the diabetes and not knowing what that means for me personally. And just,
That's something that I feel like everyone doesn't. I never did my full diabetes with COVID. I keep saying I'm going to do a full episode on it, but like
mm,
for me, I actually landed in the hospital. I had to go to the ER when I was first, tested positive because I actually started going into DKA, like at the very beginnings of it. Just and my blood sugars were completely fine. Like I thought I was killing it, but also I had a high fever and was like not fully conscious
oh,
for the first 3 days.
crazy.
I got hit really hard and it was
Wait, how did you know you were going into DKA if your blood sugars were okay?
so I threw up.
Okay.
I was what okay, so it was January 1st, 2023. I'm
Okay.
like, I did not drink enough to be hungover. And
Mm-hmm.
I tested myself. I was like, my throat feels weird. Something's off. I tested positive. Um, I immediately separate from my boyfriend in our one bedroom apartment, lol. And
Capable.
yeah, it's totally doable. Actually
Mm-hmm.
blessed though, because we actually do have a decently sized apartment, so it could have been so
That's
much worse.
nice.
But
That's nice.
I mean, it's like still a one bedroom and it's really not that big, but I just
Girl,
was
I
like,
get it.
everyone has it worse, wherever they are, different times
Uh-huh.
of life. Anyways, I'm spiraling, but all this is to say that, and then I was like not doing that poorly. And then like 12 hours after I tested positive, fever spiked up really high. I literally was just sleeping, so I wasn't eating, and I started getting starvation ketones, and I didn't realize that that's
Mm-hmm.
what was happening. But I was just so concerned with keeping my blood sugars in check during
Yep.
all of this that I was like, okay, I'll just have a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I didn't want to go too carb heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was eating, but I
Mm-hmm.
was sleeping so much that after 48 hours, I just wasn't able to hydrate enough. And I got prescribed Paxlovid because I was actually really like my fever wasn't breaking. It was like all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw up, right? Like I literally swallowed the Paxlovid and threw it up right away. And I was like, oh my God, is this because of the Paxlovid? Like, am I having a reaction to
Mm-hmm.
Paxlovid? And then I checked for ketones and they were high. And I ended up, the
Mm.
doctor was like, go to the ER. So I went to the ER, but it's New York. And you
Mm-hmm.
can't just go into the ER when everyone has COVID. So you
Mm-hmm.
can, but you're going to have to wait an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I was throwing up in the emergency room. And
Oh.
I was like literally so concerned. I was obviously wearing a mask, but there were all these
Mm-hmm.
elderly people because it was flu
Mm-hmm.
season and it's
Mm-hmm.
the winter in New York. And I remember telling the nurse, I was like, I tested positive for COVID 2 days ago. Like, I'm really sick. I'm gonna throw up again. And they just gave me a bag and they were like, just go sit there. And I was like, in the corner. And I was like, that's next to two very elderly, frail looking people. Like, I have COVID. And they were like, we don't separate for COVID anymore. Like, that's 2021. We haven't done that since like whatever. And I was like, really concerned about getting someone else sick because
Uh-huh.
I was having such a bad go of it. And you never know what cross someone else is carrying, like
Uh-huh.
it's the
Uh-huh.
whole thing. And I guess so they went to like triage me after a certain amount of time. And I guess my blood pressure was like all over the place and same with like my heart rate. And I threw up and they
Mm-hmm.
immediately like rushed me back. And
Ugh.
my poor boyfriend, like they had to like find him because they
Oh
separate
my
you to get
God.
your like
Yeah.
all this stuff. And I just remember they like left me. They wouldn't let me have any water or anything, but it took them so long to get to me that my ketones got way worse. So they couldn't find a
Mm-hmm.
vein. And I was just like poked and prodded, but I was also like kind of unconscious. And I just remember my boyfriend trying to tell the nurse, like after like 45 minutes, he was like, she has diabetes. Can someone come see her? And the nurse goes, what does that have to do with anything? And Matt, I've never seen this man lose his cool before, but he's the gentlest, kindest,
Mm-hmm.
chillest dude. He literally just he he was just like he couldn't speak. He was in shock. And I literally had like a 102 like fever. I was like unwell. And I remember like opening my eye and just being like DKA. And then like I passed back out. And they next thing I knew, like they like came back and like actually tried and they were like, why can't we find a vein? And like all this stuff. And I'm like, I wonder why. Like I had to go through
God.
3 bags of fluids and like it was a whole thing. I was there for like 12 hours. But I'm so lucky that I had really great care. They checked me out before my ketones were flushed and my
Okay.
endo was like so pissed off. She was like, if they're not gone, because I went home, I was like, if they check me out, like people need beds. Like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know what you want me to
Uh-huh.
do. I'm not in charge.
Uh-huh.
And she was like, you need to go back to the hospital. I was like, I'm not going back unless like I'm throwing up again. And she's like, okay,
Yeah.
you need to check for ketones every, like 3 hours. And then in the morning, if you're still, if you're still bad, go back. And
Oh
the
my
ketones finally abated
God.
after all of that time. But it was like so traumatic. And I know it could have been worse, but like I just feel like the way that I view COVID since then, like I'm freaking terrified. I got it
Mm-hmm.
again 5 months later and I wasn't that
Mm-hmm.
bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that was last June. It was actually when my grandma died. It was a rough 2023.
Girl, that's tough.
I mean, At least I didn't miss the Olympic, like always worse.
We're not comparing trauma. No.
Yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. There's enough trauma to go around if there's anything I've
There's
learned.
more than enough to go around.
But all of this
Yeah.
is to say that like every
COVID and
time,
diabetes.
yeah, every time I hear someone's story, like there, it's ever evolving.
Hmm.
We're where we're at with this disease, and what's good today may be bad tomorrow. What's bad today is certainly going to be better
Hmm.
tomorrow, and
Hmm.
the pendulum swings both ways. So
Yep.
I feel like at least you were separated for Tokyo when,
Yeah.
I'm sure COVID ripped through the village at certain points. Like,
It didn't. It
oh
didn't.
my
It
God.
was the most,
Well, Tokyo has it figured out.
well, yes. And the process of getting to Tokyo was intense.
Right.
It was so intense. So we got sent like our like home, what is that? Not the antigen test, the PCR test.
Hmm.
Those like the ones that are really hard to get. So we got
Yeah.
sent, you get sent four of them before you leave for Tokyo. You have to do a live call with somebody while you take the test, and they read the results and they log them in. And you had to do that a few times before you actually got on the flight. And then when you landed in Tokyo, you had like a 4 hour processing of like going through all the check-in things. Everybody's separated. You're technically not like whoever you deplane with is your pod, and if any single one person tests positive with that, the entire pod is quarantined, and you're not allowed out of the airport. And so like,
Did that happen to anyone?
not at the airport. I think one girl on the US gymnastics team, she was an alternate, she tested positive once she was in Tokyo, and then but nothing happened. Like, she had no symptoms, she just tested positive. Like, I don't know how she would have gotten it, but we got
Oh,
tested every morning, every day. You had to go and turn in your sample, and like, you had to be wearing a mask constantly. You were only allowed to go to, there was three approved places we were allowed to be, and that was the hotel, the training gym, and like the high performance center where you would get like medical treatment. And we were only allowed to go to those places. So it
so you
was
didn't see Tokyo.
no, no, I did not. I saw it from my window and I saw it from the bus.
Yikes, but fair. I mean,
Yeah.
so okay, so you made it as an alternate,
Hmm.
and what are your plans now? Like you didn't get to perform, right? So you were there as an
Right.
alternate. I mean,
Hmm.
we're happy for this person that they didn't,
Of course.
sick or hurt
Absolutely.
themselves, but
Of course. Absolutely. Like, she ended up doing really well. She absolutely earned her spot. She was on fire that year. She earned it. Like, she, I think she did the best that any US um, woman has done. So, like, she did really well. Thrilled for her. Obviously bummed that I never got to compete. I
or leave you
realize
for an
now that my tone of voice is probably coming across as like, girl,
No.
you're full of shit. But
No,
like,
no, no. I
I
believe
mean
you.
it.
I
No, I
fully
mean
believe
it.
you. You're a better person than I am. I fully believe you.
I've had a long time to think about it.
That's fair. That is fair.
Um,
So what
yeah.
does the future hold in this? Because I last we talked, you're not doing
Hmm.
professional anymore, right?
Correct.
Competitions.
Correct. So right after the Olympics, I retired in a like very abrupt manner. I was like, there was a lot of things that happened just leading up to it. Like, the Olympics is already a crazy thing. UFC gymnastics can be a really intense world to be a part of. And by the time that was over, on top of all of my health things that had just happened, I was like, I have got to get out of here.
Right.
I
If it's
really
not
need some
serving you
time.
anymore, it's
It
not
was not
serving you.
serving me. It was not serving me. And I was like, okay, I need to, well, I still need to figure out diabetes. Like,
Right.
it's been 3 months. I've been diagnosed for 3 months, and I finally have a breath. Like, in those 3 months, I went to three Olympic trials. I went to Italy and I went to Tokyo. Like, that's a lot. That was a lot.
And you were
And
still training.
I was still training, and I was still trying to figure out my numbers. And like, I didn't have a good care team. So I
Well,
was
yeah, and you were
really
also
trying to figure it
traveling,
out
like
and
traveling so
traveling
much and
during
time
COVID.
differences. And we all know if you have, if you are on any type of insulin therapy, you usually end up needing different rates of insulin at different
Hmm.
times in the day. And if you're going to all these different countries with different time differences, and then you're expected to perform at the top of your
Uh-huh.
abilities while you're also probably still honeymooning.
Hmm.
The honeymoon phase is like when your pancreas is still maybe secreting a little bit of insulin, but it's basically when you're adjusting to this new life.
Hmm.
Um, I just can't imagine, having all of
Yeah.
those pressures on you and keeping yourself alive, like, and
Yeah. And
being in
it
a
was really
public,
hard.
yeah, and being like in a very public spot. Like
Hmm.
people are looking to you to perform and people are looking at you to see how you're holding up because I think one of the biggest parts of sports is psychological. Like it is
Oh my God, 1,000%.
it and this is coming as someone who literally has never done a sport a day in her life, like except for elementary school
Your
basketball.
observations are very cute.
Thank
They're
you.
like,
I've gotten to interview
yeah.
some really cool people in different fields. So that's helped me realize, but also like watching sports on TV, like just the things that people say
Hmm.
really to me are just wild. Like I can barely run a mile. Like why would I be like, "Oh, she should have landed that." Like what the F do I know? Like I truly don't know anything. And I just think if we can't walk a mile in someone else's shoes, which you'll never be able to do,
Hmm.
like who are we to judge? So the fact that you had to handle all of this in a very center stage and at the peak of your career and
Yep.
well, the peak of your performance part
Yeah.
of your career,
Yeah.
um, is just, yeah, I think you handled it so well. And I think it's, beautiful that you're on this other side and now you are teaching, right? Teaching some
Hmm.
kiddos gymnastics thing.
Yeah. That took a long time to find that and even to want to be remotely in that world again. Um, but it's been really fun. So I, in the meantime, moved to New York and from California. That's where I was born and raised, and moved out here and just like literally started a new life from scratch, which is at
Not
times
easy.
terrifying
Yeah.
and rewarding.
Well, all my friends left the city now, so at least you know some other
Listen,
people here who've got
we're
that.
gonna we're gonna have to link up. Like
Something no one
it's
tells
a
you.
lonely life.
Something no one tells you when you turn 30, like you either have friends that are in it in the city for the long haul or they've all left. And
Uh-huh.
my older sister's friends are all in it for the long haul, and all of my friends left. So literally
That's
within
tough.
the past
That's a
like six
tough spot
months.
to be in.
I mean, I'm blessed to have my sisters here and my niece, and I still have
Yeah.
like plenty of friends here, but
Yeah.
it's humbling nonetheless. Like,
It's a hard thing. Like, God, loneliness in your late 20s. Well, just adult loneliness.
well,
Tough.
also we're changing constantly and we're expecting people to
Yeah.
change with us and that just doesn't happen all the time.
Yes.
It can happen and
Yes.
when it happens it's beautiful, but sometimes it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
happen and that's okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
I do really think that certain people are meant to be in your lives at certain times and that can
Mm-hmm.
include your pancreas pals, diabesties, which
Mm-hmm.
usually tend to last a lot longer because we all have this trauma bond that is
Yeah.
diabetes, but like
Yeah.
I'm assuming the same is in the gymnastics world as well. Like these people really, you guys, bolstered each other, kept each other up, and got each other through these really intense times. But then when you come out the other side, it's not a bad thing if it doesn't continue. Like you're not
Mm-hmm.
having that continuous trauma bond anymore. So you find you have less and less in common, but that's just a new life
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
Which is why it's like when I moved to New York, I joined JDRF's Young Leadership Council
Mm-hmm.
Committee, whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
met Miriam, who's one of the co-hosts for Pancreas Pals there. And she's,
Mm.
like she says, my diabetic big sister. And, like have this whole life and friendships through that I never really would have had I not had this
Yeah.
horrible disease.
Yeah.
I would have never met you at a Dexcom event. I would have never
Mm-hmm.
met like all these people. So I do think that there's a silver lining. Um,
Definitely.
I've gone on a tangent. I don't even remember. There was a point at some point, I swear.
Well, life continuing on
Yeah.
after whatever the things that we thought we were going to do for the rest of our lives
And oh, I
are.
was going to ask you, do
Mm.
you have any kiddos with type 1 that you do gymnastics with?
I don't. I not at the moment. I mean I get like a lot of messages from parents of kids who specifically are in gymnastics, but really in any sport. Because kind of now when you like Google type 1 diabetic gymnast or type 1
Gymnasts,
diabetic athlete,
athletes, yeah.
I will pop up and I check
So
my
we know
DMs.
who's Googling herself. No shame in the game. Listen,
No, I
we
Google
all do
myself.
it.
I pretend that it's necessary for work and it's not. I
No,
do
it
it
is.
because
It is.
I need to
It
keep up with
is. If you're
times.
ever in the press, like, and literally you have like
Yeah.
partnerships and stuff, like, yes, it is
Yeah.
important. Um, so people reach out to
Regardless,
you.
I'll also like YouTube old videos of myself and be like, wow, those were the glory days. And then I'll be like, yep, can't do that anymore. Cause it's all trampoline stuff, right? Like I kind of like look back at all of that and have the perspective of what when people would come up to me and be like, God, that's crazy. What you're doing is so crazy, or like you're very good at this thing. And I could never understand what they were saying. I was like, this is just what I do.
This is a
I
part of
like do
me.
this
Yeah.
is just it's just like step by step I've gotten here
Right.
over the last 15 years, 20 years. Now I have the perspective of, oh my God, that was crazy. I like look at old videos or remember past experiences and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe that
Yeah.
was me.
Yeah. Like
Hmm.
I mean, here I am thinking like, okay, 3 months, like no, 6 months after I was finally correctly diagnosed, decided to study abroad in England, which like, okay, not the end of the
Hmm.
world. We all speak English. We got our language from them. But I was like, I don't know how I did that. Like I was just diagnosed. I just
Hmm.
started my insulin pump, like all this stuff. And I mean, I really do feel like I don't know how, like I am very surprised in how I handled that entire first year. Um,
Hmm.
considering faking it till you make it is literally the first however many years of diabetes. Like that should be the
Yeah.
tagline.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, you're like competing and going to all these different countries. And like, were you on multiple daily injections? When did you get, are
Hmm.
you on an insulin pump? Like what's your vibe for that? Because I, in CGM, continuous glucose monitor, like, are you teched out?
Yeah, so I use the Dexcom G7 and that's my tech. I do MDI. I consider going on a pump. I still think about it every now and then, but I'm so like my skin is so sensitive and I like get
Yeah.
reactions to the adhesive so often. And then like I just hate having things on my body. And the G7 has been transformative for me because it's so small and it's so simple and easy to use. And like
This is
you
not
put it on
sponsored
so
by
quick.
Dexcom. So no one,
Not,
no one think
no,
that
this is not. This is
this one's
not.
not, it's not.
This is very, very, very genuine. That one has helped me so much because like the way you put it on, it takes me like 20 seconds. And the old one, I don't know why, but it would take me like a good like 5 minutes. And to me, that makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the
but yeah,
G6 is
so I
bigger.
the G6 is bigger. It's more visible. It's it's like just kind of clunky. Yeah. I mean,
There are pros and
also
cons to
love
each.
there
Yeah.
are and I was having adhesive reactions to the G7 at first, but I got those under control. So it's like it was a whole thing. It's
Any
always a
hacks
thing.
for that? Do you like spray
Um,
Flonase or something?
I started doing that. It worked a little bit. And then honestly, I think I kind of got my like seasonal allergies under control. And then it became
Oh,
winter and then my skin kind of calmed down in like
yeah.
so many different ways that that
Hmm.
is kind of what helped for me, but no like specific hacks.
Gotcha. For those who are wondering what I mean by Flonase, I know some people will, and I've never tried this, so take this with a grain of salt, but we'll spray Flonase, which is an antihistamine situation, onto the skin, let it dry, and then apply the adhesives of the Dexcom. So it, in theory, should help with any type of
Yeah.
issue.
Key phrase in that is the let it dry part. Because
Oh
I
no. It's crazy how adhesive doesn't stick to liquids, right?
oh, isn't that such an obvious thing that one should know?
No, no, because I feel like I would be tempted to pat it dry, but then that might also take it off. So like I could
See,
totally
that
see
was
how that would
my thought
be.
process. So
Yeah.
I was desperate trying to do this when I was using the G7. I sprayed the Flonase on and I waited like maybe a minute, but it was still like wet to the touch. And I was like, yeah, that'll do it. And then I put it on and my transmitter just slid right off my skin. And then I had a meltdown.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, listen, even no matter how much insurance you have, like this stuff still is not free. Great
No.
products still cost a pretty penny, along with insulin,
Hmm.
along with all the stuff that we need to keep ourselves alive. So if something doesn't
Yep.
work out, I have been known to have a mini meltdown, or as Miriam, who's one of the lovely Pancreas Pals co-hosts, she likes to call it a mini pity party, and it's okay to have those. She likes to remind
Oh,
me
yes.
it's
Yes.
okay to do a pity party. Just don't let it last for days, you know?
I love a pity party.
Oh,
It's
me
one of
too.
those things I actually tell Lori, my partner, where I'm like, I am looking for pity right now. I really I need you. I need you to go, oh my gosh, that's so hard.
I feel like we
I
need to get Lori and Matt and other partners of diabetics into a
I
support
agree.
group because I totally stole this from my friend Betty's now fiance Sam. Like he called it back before they got engaged, because it was just him and Matt, but boyfriends of diabetics. So we called it the
Mhm.
bods. And he's like, I'm looking to add people to the bods. I'm like, okay, it
It's
needs
a
to be the
serious
pods,
thing. It's
partners of
right,
diabetics, not sponsored by
right.
Omnipod. But
Oh, good one. Could
honestly,
be though. Could get
yeah, Omnipod hit me up. Always looking for sponsorships. But so shameless. But I think that, that was going to be my final question for you.
hmm
Really kind of because you were diagnosed with an established partner, like you and Lori had already been
hmm
together. I'm really curious to hear how, I've seen y'all's bond. It's like, I love it. I'm here for it. It's so cute. And clearly she is involved in diabetes and she's helping support and not just, the emotional sense, but also like showing up physically and going to events with
hmm
you. And as someone who, doesn't have a chronic illness, when you do, I mean, I always feel like a burden half the time, but that's my own stuff. So, like, I'm curious when you were going through these changes in your body and when you finally got the diagnosis, like, how was Lori in that? Like, I mean, I'm sure she was great, but I guess my question is more of like, how do you feel that shaped your diagnosis?
Oh my God, it was a crazy, crazy, crazy time for both of us. So, for context, she was also training for the Olympics at that time.
Right.
And her, like, I mean, enough said, that's a lot of stress on a couple to have two individual people training for the Olympics
Yeah.
living in the same apartment, let alone dating. And we had been dating officially for about 2.5, 3 months when I
Oh
got
my, why did I think
diagnosed.
it was years? Okay, again,
Isn't
listener,
that
I didn't
crazy?
do research.
Is it? No,
So,
but I mean, also, it's not like super, it's not, I don't think it's out there like when we first started dating. Like,
yeah, that would be really creepy if I just like Googled that and that came up.
actually, there's an entire timeline that you can see on People Magazine.
That tracks. I've
Yeah.
had to edit stories on, relationship or like cancer timelines and stuff like that. That's just the
Yeah,
media
that's tough.
world we live in today.
Isn't it
Um,
crazy?
but okay, so
But anyway, back to the point. Getting diagnosed. So dating for about 3 months. I get the call. I go into the apartment. I had texted her because I remember sitting in my car and being like, I actually just don't know what to do. My parents had moved out of state. My mom left the day before. Like,
should.
it's literally like if you kind of look at all like the timing of events in my life, it's like it's comically cruel some at these moments.
You know,
Comically cruel.
if you believe in a greater power, sometimes it's times like these that you really just think of
Mhm.
sense of humor, you know,
Sense of humor gets you through it.
gets you through it.
Retrospectively, I think in that moment, I wasn't even thinking about like the gravity of anything. But like looking back, I'm like, that's crazy.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot. So my mom had moved away. Both my parents have moved away. All my siblings are also out of state, and they are my main support system. Lori and I live together. Well, not officially, but like basically live together. Come on, we're gay. Things move fast. Um,
Good to know.
um, and I got the call. I texted her like probably after sitting in my car, like in silence for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And I was like, Dr. P called. I have diabetes. And she just texted me back, shit. And then I walk into the
iconic.
apartment and I walk in and I was like, I don't even know what to say right now. Like,
Yeah,
and she kind of just stood there and was like, okay, well, what's next? Like, what do we do now? And it was very much like we are going to tackle this together. What are we going to do about this? And so I woke up at like 6 o'clock the next morning because I was waiting for a call from the office of when to come in the next day. And I was like, well, I don't want to miss the call and I'm scared. So I was sitting up in bed at 6 in the morning and she was like, do you want me to come with you? I can come with you. And I was like, no, no, no. Like, you don't have to come with me. It's going to be so early. Like, and then I
and you'd
finally got
also
the
only been
call.
dating for like 3 months, so
Exactly. Like coming to a doctor's appointment, kind of a big deal.
yeah,
I mean, like of all the people in the world that I would have wanted to be there, top, top person. Also, I
for
think my
sure.
headphones just died. I'm going to put
It's
one
okay.
in. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. So top person that I want to be there. stressed, not wanting to make my burden her burden now, also knowing that she's training for the Olympics.
Yeah.
And then I remember like frantically getting dressed, getting the call and being like, can you be there in 30 minutes? And I'm like, I live 30 minutes away. Yes, I can be there in 30 minutes. Sure. Getting dressed. And she's like, well, I can just sit in the car. Like, I'll just go with you. I'll sit in the car. And I was like, okay, that I can do. And then when we get there, she was like, I was like, will you just come in? Maybe you can sit in the waiting room with me. And then she comes in, sits in the waiting room. And then like I get called back to go back.
Right.
And I look at her and I was like, will
You
you
just want to come
come?
back with me? Yeah. I mean, it's
And
a
she
huge
did.
diagnosis. Oh, I love that.
And she
Is she
did.
on
And
your
she took
Dexcom?
notes and she
She
is my
took
only Dexcom
notes.
follower. She took notes. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sobbing. Like in this appointment, I'm a mess. I'm
Oh,
sobbing.
my mom was sobbing on mine, and I was just, I mean, I was crying,
Mm.
but I feel like I was also like worried about her.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Mm-hmm.
but that's so great. I mean, not
Yeah.
great that that happened, but great that she was able to be there, especially during
And
Olympic
then she
training.
like she came to my first endo appointment that I had like a week later. She took the notes and she made sure that we got all of our questions answered that we came like prepped for. She asked questions when I didn't and she kept track of the information and she looped my parents in and like all of the amazing things like and then she learned how to be diabetic with me at the same time. So it was like very, very, very helpful to have like somebody to be confirming information at the same time. I'm like, okay, I think that I should take this now, but what if I don't take this? And she's like, well, let me look it up too. And like we'd both find new information.
That's
And
amazing.
so it's like, I remember I went to a diabetes camp for adults
Was it like
up in
Slipstream?
Maine.
What's it called?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Slipstream. It was with Connected in Motion, and it was
Yeah.
awesome. And they hired me to be the photographer because, also, side note, I now am a photographer. Um,
Any new
and
headshots, I'll hit you up.
oh yeah, cool, 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 cool. Yeah, no, send me an
No,
email.
you do
Anybody
more art.
listening need headshots?
She does more art, like artsy stuff too. Like you do cool
No,
stuff.
I also do headshots. I just don't post about that much, but headshots are great.
You mean you don't like having random glamour shots on your Instagram page to
Crazy,
share with people?
crazy.
That's
Funnily
weird.
enough. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But yes, so I was their photographer and I met this group of girls that were incredible, women that were incredible. And we were talking about our partners, and Lori had come because she just wanted to go to Maine. So she just like putsied around while I went to this camp. And then we all like connected afterwards and we all got lunch and we got ice cream, I remember. And we were talking about like dosing for it and whatever. And then they were like doting on her of like, you know, so much. Like, what would you dose for this ice cream? And she goes, well, you woke up kind of early and then we walked around town for like 2 hours and you did have a cider earlier. So that's probably going to affect your glucose later. So like I would probably take 4 units. And like the group was sitting there in like shock.
Honestly,
I was like,
MVP. MVP.
MVP, literally
I
best
mean, let's
diabetic
not take
partner.
away from you doing the work,
But
but it's
Lori walks the walk.
incredible. It's incredible to
Mm-hmm.
have someone who meets you there. I think
It's
that's
true.
the important part of it.
True. So true. And takes the mental burden anytime in any way that she possibly can.
Yeah, I
Like,
think sharing the load is like the hardest thing to learn how to do in a relationship. And it's definitely something that I've been with Matt for 5 years. I think 5 years next week, maybe.
oh, happy
And
anniversary.
thank you, thank you. And it's something that, you have to learn together because you are two separate beings who are,
Now
purposely spending,
co-inhabiting
yeah, like
and
choosing it. And
mhm,
I think that like, I mean, for me, it's very important for me that I know that I'm the sole person in charge of my diabetes because I always get this like weird burden feeling out because I've had not
mm,
great boyfriends in the past who have made me feel like, like I was putting them out by having this chronic illness. But I really like one of the ways I knew instantly like Matt was such a gem is like he's never once really like acted like something was any way just on me. Like it's like it's
mhm,
it's very much meeting me there. Like, okay, you
mhm.
need a minute, let's take a minute. Like let's not even we don't even talk about it. Let's sit down. Like we've been walking for 6 hours. Like let's, I think it's time for you to have some food. Like, I mean, I'm atrociously hangry person with or without diabetes. So I think he's like very
Uh-huh.
much scared of me in that regard, which, I kind of feel bad, but this is real. This is me. But it's really is about, you know, everyone has their stuff And
Yep.
ours is just beeping and, we'll let other people know that we have the stuff, but
Yep.
nobody's perfect. And having a partner that really realizes that is just icing on top of the cake, for
Oh
lack
my
of a
God.
better, which we can
Yeah,
eat, by the way.
we can eat, damn it.
We can. Okay, now that I've gone on like 10 different tangents and checked my blood sugar like 60 times while you were talking,
Hmm.
I think it's time to wrap up. So, as always, thank you so much for listening, guys. Follow the one and only Charlotte Drury. That is literally how you can find her on Instagram at Charlotte Drury.
There it
Um,
is.
there it is. And follow us on Instagram
You
if you
can also
compare
Google
us.
me because I'm also doing that.
Yeah, Google her, look up her relationship timeline.
Uh-huh.
Follow
Uh-huh.
Pancreas Pals on Instagram at pancreas_pals. Follow us on
That
Facebook,
too.
Pancreas Pals PP. Slide into our DMs. Email us at pancreaspals123@gmail.com. We love hearing from you guys, and we are always down for new ideas on who we should interview and what we should talk about. Charlie, thank you so much. And guys, we're gonna plan a meetup, so
Yeah.
get
New
ready.
York City diabetics
Yeah,
and partners potentially unite.
pods.
Pods.
There it is. All right, guys, have a great week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.